Chicago School of Criticism, of literary criticism. Now, before I proceed further, I would just like to tell you that when you study literary criticism or when you study literary theory, you'll find out that text is something which is very important. This is a text. Text is very important. And apart from text, you have author, and then you have readers. So we have author, we have text, we have readers. Now, what is more important in analyzing a text? Whether author is important, whether text is important, or the readers are important. The various kind of theories which emerged, they are based on that. Whether they give importance to author or his or her background and all that, or to the text, that is the form of the text or the content of the text, or in form, language, or plot, or whatsoever, and whether readers are important. So keeping all these points in our mind, before I come to Chicago School of Literary Criticism, I would like to tell you the timeline of the development of various kinds of literary theories. Some of them overlap also. So we have formalism, new criticism, and Chicago School of Literary Criticism. The timeline is 1930s to the present. Formalism, new criticism, and Chicago School of criticism, they have more or less the common tenets, but they vary in some points that I'll tell you later. And then comes next, that is psychoanalytic criticism, or those who are the students of psychology, they must have heard this name, Jung, but it's pronounced Young. Okay, Young. So psychoanalytic criticism or Jungian criticism, where psychology plays the important role. Again, you have 1930s to the present. Coming to the next development, it's Marxist criticism. The name denotes it is after the name of Karl Marx, who gave more importance to socio-economic perspective. So it's again 1930s to the present. Then reader response theory, as the name denotes, more importance to reader, 1960s to the present. Then we have structuralism, semiotics, 1920s to the present. Then we have post-structuralism, deconstruction, 1960s to the present. Then we have new historicism, cultural studies, 1980s. Then we have feminist literary criticism, 1960s. Gender queer theory, 1970s. Critical race theory, 1970s. So if you keep all these points in your mind, I think you can understand it very well, that how we have the timeline of this development of literary criticism theory. When did formalism, neo-criticism, or Chicago School of Criticism emerge? And when psychoanalytic criticism, Marxist criticism, reader response theory, structuralism, semiotics, post-structuralism, new historicism, feminist literary criticism, gender queer theory, and critical race theory. Because what I have seen, that as I told you in the beginning, that when you start reading, say, English literature, or when you are going to study, say, the rape of the lock, and if you do not know the age in which it was written, or the other points, then you'll not be able to analyze it properly. At least you should know that this belongs to 18th century or so. So these kind of developments of literary criticism must be in your mind in order to have the better understanding of literary criticism. Let us now begin Chicago School of Literary Criticism. Before I discuss Chicago School of Literary Criticism, I would like to suggest you that please go through my video on new criticism. The lecture has already been delivered in the class, and there I discussed about new criticism. About new criticism, I told you that new criticism, the basic purpose of new criticism is that the focus is not on the biographical, historical, or social background of the author. The focus is on the text. That is the basic idea behind new critics. Now, the Chicago School of Literary Criticism was a form of criticism of English literature which began at University of Chicago, and that is why the name Chicago School. As I told you, in 1930s, and it lasted, say, 1950s. This school, the Chicago School of Literary Criticism, is also called Neo-Aristotelianism. This is something which is very important. They were called Neo-Aristotelians. Why? Because of their strong emphasis on Aristotle's concept of plot, character, and genre. While discussing catharsis and hamartia, I have already told you that Aristotle, a famous Greek writer, wrote Poetics. All these points I have discussed in the topic 3 Unities. And Aristotle, in his Poetics, in chapter 6, he gave the definition of tragedy. And in his definition of tragedy, he said the tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious and all. He says that tragedy, there are 6 elements of tragedy. He talks about 6 elements of tragedy. Number 1, plot. Number 2, character. Number 3, thought. Number 4, diction. Number 5, melody. And number 6, spectacle. These are the 6 elements of a tragedy according to Aristotle. Now, these Chicago School of Literary Critics, they were called Neo-Aristotelians because they laid a strong emphasis on Aristotle's concept of plot, character. Now, these are the elements which are told by Aristotle in order of preference. That is, plot comes at number 1, then character, then thought, then diction, then melody, then spectacle. Aristotle says in Poetics, plot is the soul of tragedy. It is plot which is very important. Chicago School of Critics, they reacted against New Criticism. New Criticism, which was then highly popular form of literary criticism. And they accused New Critics for being very subjective. Because they said the New Critics laid a lot of emphasis on diction part. And diction here comes at number 4. So they said the New Critics is stressed on diction part very much. They are very much subjective. And so Chicago School of Critics reacted, against them. They aimed instead for total objectivity. The New Critics regarded the language and poetic diction as most important. But the Chicago School considered such things merely the building material of poetry. They said that these are nothing but, building material. Like Aristotle, they valued the structure. They valued the structure or form of a literary work. They said more than the complexities of language, it is the structure or form which is very important. And they followed Aristotle's hierarchical list of the narrative elements. And I have told you that this is the hierarchical pattern of Aristotle's narrative elements. The plot is at number 1. According to Aristotle and according to these Chicago critics, the most important aspect of a work is, plot. I told you Aristotle says plot is the soul of tragedy. Followed by character, then thought, then diction. Aristotle's last 2 aspects, that is, last 2 aspects are melody and spectacle. They are less important to the Chicago School. Despite the reaction, the Chicago School is considered by some critics to be the part of new criticism movement because both of them focused on the text. If you talk about the founder critic of this movement, we always mention the name of R.S. Crane. R.S. Crane is considered the founder of Chicago School of Criticism. One of the most complete discussions of the Chicago critics is found in this book. It is entitled Critics and Criticism, Ancient and Modern. Published in 1952, and it is edited by R.S. Crane. A full exposition of the theoretical basis of the group's method is to be found in Crane's study. Next is the language of criticism and the structure of poetry. Published in 1953. So what you have seen here is that it is R.S. Crane who is considered as the founder of this kind of movement. And the two books edited by him, one is Critics and Criticism, Ancient and Modern, and another is The Language of Criticism and Structure of Poetry, published in 1953. Here, I would like to mention the name of another critic who belongs to second generation of Chicago critics, and he has written a very important book called The Rhetoric of Fiction in 1961. The name of this critic is Wayne C. Booth. Wayne C. Booth. Wayne C. Booth. And the name of the book is The Rhetoric of Fiction, 1961. Now, you see, I'm telling you these names because most of the time they are asked in competitive examinations also. You will write the descriptive answer on this. But in competitive examinations also, sometimes the names of the books, critics, they are asked. Now, these Chicago School of Critics, whom we call Neo-Aristotelians, as I told you in the beginning, that they are the professors of departments of humanities, University of Chicago. And some famous names, as I told in the beginning, R.S. Crane, Elder Olson, Richard McKeown, Norman MacLean, and Bernard Weinberg. So they are the famous critics. These critics attacked some of the important tenets of new criticism and elaborated an alternative formalistic method of criticism, as I told you, partly derived from Aristotle's Poetics. So what you have understood is that most of the features of Chicago School of critics are common with new criticism. But while new critics focused on the diction part, they focused on the language part. They focused on the structure, that is the form, and this they derived from Aristotle's Poetics. Thank you very much.